I love talking to you about sustainability, and I'm so glad you put this group together because sustainability is the number one most important factor today in CPG. And I'm seeing it mimic a little bit of that organic shift that happened 5, 10, 12 years ago. Now, when a buyer goes on to RangeMe and they see two products, if both the products have slightly similar or very similar unique selling points, and they seem like they're very similar in terms of packaging and attributes, what will make one stand out over the other will be if one is certified and the other is not. So as much as possible, I do encourage brands to seek out key certifications that are important in their industry and their types of products.
Hi Veer, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Dawal. How are you? Good night to you, or good evening?
Yeah. Towards the end, it will be good night, but yeah, thank you so much. It's good evening for us.
That's right. That's right.
How's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. Yeah. It's it's about 8:20 here in San Francisco, so it's been a busy couple of weeks.
Sure.
Some of the trade shows are starting again, so travel is picked up, and you when you haven't traveled for a while, you forget all the tips and tricks that you were used to.
Yeah.
You're forgetting to pack things, and the next thing you know, you're like, oh my God, I've forgotten that. So
Yeah.
it's starting to get back into that flow of things, but things are going well. How are things going with you?
We are doing pretty well. The factory is up and running and pretty much excited for that. And yeah, all is well here.
Fantastic. Yeah, the packaging looks great on the new products, and I can't wait to try them.
Really appreciate your time this Monday morning. So, thank you so much once again for joining in.
Happy to be here. It's a pleasure.
Hello viewers, good morning. Welcome to the new episode of Sustainable Future Food Talk. Today we have with us someone special from RangeMe, Mr. Veer Satyan. Veer is a founding member of the RangeMe team that started in Australia, where RangeMe began over 7 years ago. Today, Veer is the head of supplier success based in San Francisco and leads and manages the fantastic team responsible for helping suppliers get the best success possible on RangeMe. So, Veer, this is fantastic to have you on this session. If you can, briefly introduce about yourself first as to, how is your journey with RangeMe and, how RangeMe is building in the US.
Absolutely happy to do that. So, as you rightfully mentioned, we launched RangeMe in Australia, which a lot of people are not familiar with. But that also explains the name, because oftentimes in the US, even though we're very well established here now, I do get the question, why RangeMe? Well, in Australia and also in the UK, they call your product line your product range. Whereas in America, it's called your product assortment or your categories. So in Australia and the UK, they say they're conducting a range review instead of a category review. And so hence the name RangeMe, which
awesome.
and now it's come full circle because we've just recently launched into the UK. Okay. So all the retailers there absolutely right away understood why we called it RangeMe.
Okay.
So it's easy for them to know. But yes, we started in Australia. It was founded by Nikki Jackson, and Nikki had worked in CPG for many, many years with the likes of Kellogg's and Goodman Fielder. And she then, her youngest daughter had really bad eczema as a child. So Nikki worked with a local chemist, and she came out with this amazing product. And she thought, over 20 years of CPG experience, I know all the buyers by first name. I should be able to get my product into their stores very easily. But what she found, which is what all small brands and entrepreneurs find, the big box buyers did not have any time for her now that she wasn't with the big CPG brands. That's when she really realized they needed to be an easier way for the big box retail to find new and innovative brands, and then also for the new and innovative brands to be able to have more brand awareness growing in a faster and more cost-effective manner. And that was how RangeMe as a concept came into being. So within about 6 months in Australia, we were working with almost all the top retailers,
Wow.
Australia is a large country by landmass, but small in terms of the number of retailers that really control the market. And we realized we had to move into the American market. So we did that now 7 years ago. We set up our base in San Francisco, and there's been no looking back ever since. So I personally moved to San Francisco about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And today in the US, we work with over 80% of the top 100 retailers.
Wow. That's
You name it, we work with them. Yeah, thank you. So, the likes of Albertsons, Publix, CVS, Walmart, Kroger, down to more regional chains as well. So your Wegmans and your HEBs and Maya, all the way down to independents. So mom and pop independents, essentially anyone looking for packaged retail products, we're happy to work with them and have them find the amazing suppliers that use RangeMe. And as a result of those partnerships, we have over 200,000 suppliers on RangeMe, and they vary across categories, but the most engaged with and the most active categories are food and beverage, followed by beauty and personal care. And then we go into your more general merchandise. So pet and baby, home and houseware, categories like that. And it's been a fantastic ride, to see even pre-COVID, there was a shift with consumers who were looking for more innovation and smaller brands that they could relate to more. And now, especially with the COVID shift, the digital transformation has been so quick that RangeMe plays an even more important role than it ever did before. So we're very lucky to be in the space where connecting brands and buyers every single day. And as part of our future expansion, we just launched into the UK a few months ago. So we already work with Tesco, Asda, Co-op, Iceland Foods, and Lloyd's Pharmacy, many more retailers to come. And the idea will be to continue that expansion all across Europe and then into Canada as well.
Lovely. This is such an inspiring journey, and wishing you more luck and success ahead.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. So we, helping our viewers to understand this, what are those critical points that, give prime importance while reviewing a product on RangeMe?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. I'd like to compare RangeMe and tell everybody to think of it as your LinkedIn profile. Okay. It's digital, it's 24/7, it's always on and always discoverable. And therefore, what's really key with RangeMe is to realize that it's B2B and it's yourself marketing to the retail buyers. And so the language you use and the unique attributes you put in have to be very retail specific, which can sometimes be different to what you might have on your consumer facing website. Right. So the key is thinking about what a retail buyer would find attractive with your brand and product that would differentiate you from someone else. So sustainable, non-GMO, gluten-free, organic, fair trade certified, low sugar, keto, all these attributes that are really important in the industry, those are the ones to call out. And also, very importantly, the certifications that your product has. We've seen a trend over the last couple of years in general. I think I love talking to you about sustainability, and I'm so glad you put this group together because sustainability is the number one most important factor today in CPG. And I'm seeing it mimic a little bit of that organic shift that happened 5, 10, 12 years ago. Now, when a buyer goes on to RangeMe and they see two products, if both the products have slightly similar or very similar unique selling points, and they seem like they're very similar in terms of packaging and attributes, what will make one stand out over the other will be if one is certified and the other is not. So as much as possible, I do encourage brands to seek out key certifications that are important in their industry and their types of products.
Wow, this is really helpful, for those young CPG brands who really wish to, get into these mainstream retailers. I think this is such an important point.
It absolutely is. And, one of the challenges too, when you talked about young emerging brands, is the budget. Budgets are stretched so tightly and they're so thin. It is definitely important to try and earmark some of that budget towards these certifications. There are some certifications that don't cost a lot, but there are some that do cost a lot.
Right.
But that could be the difference between you being picked up on shelf and not.
That's an important point, I'm sure. So we're coming down to my next question. Of course, you briefly mentioned it about in your introduction, but since the pandemic, the communication between the buyer and the seller has gone virtual. So while the buyer and seller, they are not meeting physically, but what are the new technology trends in this space to fill the gap?
Yeah, of course. I think what's been really interesting is even pre-COVID, we would do a lot of trade shows and we'd get the ability to meet our buyers and our suppliers face to face. And you could already sense that there was a sense of tiredness and fatigue and inconvenience and cost that a lot of people were complaining about, but had no other option because they didn't know that they could do business any other way, or they didn't feel like it could be as effective. Now, I still believe that an in-person meeting is very, very effective. But when you balance the scales, you have time, cost, energy, all of those things here for in-person. And on virtual, you have the convenience, the ability to balance your work life and also get business done. So what we're finding in particular with all the key buyers we talk to is they want to conduct most of their business virtually. And maybe now that things are opening up a little bit, they'll have a couple of in-person meetings, but most of it is going to be done virtual. So, I spoke with a buyer just the other day from a very large, let's say top 10 retail chain in the country.
Yeah.
And she said the ability for her to be able to stay at home with the kids and manage that and not have to travel all over the country all the time is invaluable.
Yeah.
So she's doing about 80% of her discovery and planning virtually, and only about 20% of it in person. So that has changed a lot. And we've been very fortunate to continue to be a part of that change that continues to keep buyers and sellers together. And you mentioned technology. People are conducting one-on-one meetings. We have a platform called Connect that helps buyers and brands connect very easily.
Okay.
You can schedule a meeting and then you can discuss, and your follow-up for samples and follow-up messages happen on your RangeMe profile. So It works really seamlessly together. But in general, we're seeing a lot of that. Another great example, Dawal, is Walmart Open Call. Now, it is only for made in USA companies, and they do it every year. We are honored. This is the 4th year that we're conducting Open Call for them.
Nice.
And what Walmart does with Open Call is they will put out exactly what it is, an open call on RangeMe and also on their network to any eligible suppliers. And they'll say, please apply to be considered to do business with Walmart. Last year, we had 11,000 applicants. This year, we just finalized it, so I have to look at the numbers, but I think it's pretty similar.
Okay.
And the Walmart buyers will now review all the applications, and they'll decide which companies to meet and not meet with. So, for example, last year, they decided and shortlisted 1,000 companies.
Out of 11,000?
Which is amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. You have 1,000 companies to meet with them. So this year, they sent out a message to the companies asking them if they'd rather meet in person or virtually. And the majority of the companies wrote back and said, we'd rather have virtual meetings.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is a guarantee. Exactly. And this is a guaranteed meeting with the Walmart buyer. And most of the responses have said, we'll meet virtually. So I think that's kind of the new world that we're in. And I like it because I feel like it levels the playing field for emerging brands. A brand like yourself doesn't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to fly over here, have a massive booth, hope to meet a buyer. You can conduct a lot of business virtually without needing $200,000, $300,000 in marketing budget annually. And that's what RangeMe has always been about, which is trying to level the playing field. You know, on our platform, you can be a Nestle brand, a Chobani brand, or a tiny emerging brand, and you have the same size profile on the buyer screen.
That's
So
interesting.
it doesn't matter how much you're paying or not paying, you have the same size profile. Versus, I went to Sweets and Snacks Expo a week ago in Chicago, 2 weeks ago. About 70% of the brands there were your top 100 CPG companies. The booth for Mondelez International must have been about 300K. I mean, it was that big.
Wow.
How is a tiny brand with a tiny 10 by 10 going to compete, you know? So I think we need more of these opportunities for emerging brands to compete and get the same kind of brand awareness without needing 10 times the marketing budget.
Absolutely. No, this is great. You know, really appreciate efforts of RangeMe that you guys have put in, because, you know, it is so important to have that, you know, level playing field for young brands also, because, you know, else young brands will not get a chance to, you know, showcase their products or really be there out there in the mainstream. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Coming down to my next question, Veer. So, you know, this is of course a very basic question, but I would say I'm sure this will be really helpful with your, you know, responses for the emerging CPG brands. So, what are those things that a seller should know about the buyer before a meeting?
One of my favorite questions, you know, and it's something that I see so often on RangeMe. There was an example just a few weeks ago of a CVS buyer requesting a sample. And the first response from the seller was, "Thanks for your interest. Can you tell me more about your stores?" And, you know, in my head, I'm thinking, you've potentially lost business, right? I think what's really important is understanding that retail chain. And that means knowing where their stores are located, knowing, therefore, the consumers that live around their stores. And as a result of that, understanding too the other types of products that are carried in their stores. So if you're pitching tomorrow to Albertsons for one of their banners, it's important to understand what Safeway typically carries and what they carry around you in particular, because products, we have a Safeway 2 streets down from us in San Francisco. The Safeway here is completely different to the Safeway I just went to in Chicago a week and a half ago, with completely different products, because it's a different kind of consumer. It's a different price point. There's price sensitivity. So it's really important to understand who the retailer is, a little bit of history about them, what kind of products they carry because of the consumers that they serve, and therefore how you would position yourself to go, I realize of all the different snack bars you carry, mine have these unique selling points that some of your current ones do not. And that makes it important. But coming down to the final piece, it always comes down to business and money. The buyer at the end of the day, no matter who he, she, or they are, their number one goal is making profit for their retail chain. So if you can provide the right kind of margins, then you're much more likely, obviously, to do business with them. A lot of brands struggle, I think, with understanding that piece. And, you know, I love Damon John because he talks about margins all the time. I watch Shark Tank episodes all the time, and he talks about margins. It is really important because no matter what, no matter how amazing the retail chain is, no matter how progressive or what kind of trends that they're on top of, all of them have profit at the center of what they're trying to do. So the category manager needs to grow their category by a certain amount monetarily and revenue-wise, and therefore your margin that you provide them play directly into that.
Absolutely. This is, you know, very much important, as you rightly mentioned about, you know, how much important it is for a young brand to really be aware of the retailer. So yeah, that's very critical. Else you have, you lost the business in the first go, as you
Yeah,
as you mentioned.
yeah, that's true. And that's also to say that young emerging brands can take a step back sometimes and not feel forced into having to do retail business, because if the margins don't work initially, it might not be worth it at that point. And you see that happen a lot in the industry. I love using the Shark Tank example here too, because often you'll hear on Shark Tank episodes, the sharks ask questions like, what does it cost you to make and what do you sell it for? But then it comes down to, okay, you did $200,000 in revenue last year. How come your profit is zero? And you'll hear stories like, I started working with a big box retailer who wanted free fill, which, 2 pallets or 100 cases, and therefore I made nothing on it. Or I had to squeeze my margin down so much to be able to do business with them that I made nothing from it. It's an interesting game to play because I think the lure of a large retailer can be very enticing, but you don't necessarily have to chase it if you feel like it's going to be out of your control. Because if you do that, what ends up happening, which I'm sure you've seen, you've spoken to a lot of people, you're well connected now. A lot of brands end up struggling more than achieving more because they've decided to do business that has stretched them too thin and they can't operate. And if they lose that one retailer, then they have nothing to fall back on. So I recommend to young emerging companies to first establish their direct-to-consumer sales. Start with smaller retail chains that have higher margins and you can fulfill orders quicker and get repeat customers. Grow that base and then consider the large national chains where it is very likely that your margin has to be squeezed for you personally so that they can make at least 40% and above.
Can't agree more. I definitely. Well, we, coming down to my last question, I would say, unfortunately, because, I am just, enjoying our conversation and the kind of responses, which you're giving are incredible. And, especially for the young brands, these are very useful. And because, they are really going out there to present themselves at the retail, and these are those questions which the buyer would ask. So, thank you so much for this. So coming down to my last question, how is RangeMe, helping CPG brands offer sustainable future food?
Yeah, it's one of our biggest, I would say, passions at RangeMe. There are two things we're really passionate about. One is sustainability and the other is diversity. And so what we did about even before COVID, we did this about 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago. We created a special collection that all buyers see on RangeMe called Sustainability. And that features brands that have sustainable certifications or unique selling points and attributes. So you could have certifications like Fair Trade or Rainforest Alliance or 1% for the planet, but you could also have unique attributes in your description and unique selling points. Back to that first question of what are the key things on your profile on RangeMe? And if you have either of those, you're in that collection, and we highlight that collection front and center all the time. And by doing so, we're able to promote within our 200,000 brands, we're able to promote the sustainable ones more. In addition to that, because RangeMe gets so many different product attributes, a lot of the retailers are coming to us now and saying, I would like to put out, similar to Walmart, an open invitation to do a limited time sourcing campaign. You're familiar with RangeMe, so you would see those quite often in your submission section, those limited time campaigns. And you'll notice this year in particular, many of them are around diversity and sustainability. And so that allows the retailer to sit back and the buyer doesn't have to scroll through thousands of brands. but they can wait for you to inbound and apply to them. So we continue to push that. We continue to put it at the forefront with that collection as well. And we also partner with certifying bodies.
Okay.
We're part of some really great certification companies networks. In particular, just a few months ago at Expo West, our head of marketing and growth, Brandon Leong, who I think you're connected with on LinkedIn, was part of a panel for the Good Food Collection. And that was with non-GMO, fair trade, and MSC certified.
Okay.
And so those three bodies came together. Brandon was emceeing it, and the discussion was around continued sustainability and what players in the industry, but also certification partners can do, because those certifying partners are starting to make it easier. We talked about the cost of certifications at the start of this conversation. There are some certifying bodies that are starting to make it easier for the small emerging brands to get those sustainable certifications. And I think that's the key: education and awareness. There are a lot of brands I talk to that are passionate about sustainability, but they don't know how to go about it and how to make it work within the finances that they have and the operations they have. So I think that's very exciting for us to see, because as I'm sure we can all agree, even though there are some people that talk about climate change not existing, but we won't get into that conversation here. Sustainability has to be at the forefront of everything we do for us to continue to grow this industry and also help heal the planet. So that's why, it's such an honor for me to be here with what you're doing, with the groups that you've put together and the networking you're doing. Sustainable Future Food Experts. What a fantastic group name. So, thank you. It's people like you that continue to push this on the forefront. And also big thanks to the consumers, because consumers today want sustainable products, whether it's the packaging or the entire life cycle. They want to be more socially and environmentally conscious in their purchasing. So we'll continue to provide them with those opportunities.
And thank you to you, Veer, because RangeMe is contributing massively towards sustainability, as I happy to understand from you on that. And really thank you so much once again for your time this morning. And I'm glad to host you on more sessions going forward. And if you can, just give a message out there to the viewers who are those CPG brand, as to how can RangeMe help them, or how can they connect with RangeMe and connect with you and take it forward.
Sure. Firstly, thank you for having me as well. And I'm happy to come in and have more conversations with you. In terms of RangeMe, I always talk about it as one of many other things you have to do to get the buyer's attention. And when you consider that we've been around for about 7 years, and we have the basic, but the premium version as well, which I know you're on. When you look at the premium version, our renewal rate for people that have been doing it for over 4 years is above 80% right now.
Wow, nice.
And what that shows me when I have conversations with those companies is they understand that it's not just a try it 1 year, and if I don't get into 100 stores, it didn't work kind of thing. It's about constantly having a presence everywhere. I remember being part of a conversation with an industry expert, Alison Ball. She's fantastic. She has a great podcast. And Ali talks about minimum a buyer needs 8 to 9 touch points before they decide to reach out to you. You usually get 8 no's before you get a yes.
Yeah.
And so I like to talk about RangeMe as that, where if a buyer goes to a trade show, maybe they see you. If they're online, maybe they see you. If they log on to RangeMe, maybe they see you. Now you've started increasing those number of touch points. So it's really important to have a presence. And it comes at a very cost-effective method compared to many other options out there. If your viewers want to get in touch, I'm happy for you to share my email with them, and they can write to me directly. And I did want to say one last note, when we talked about sustainability, but you asked earlier about virtual versus in person. Another big benefit of virtual is the carbon footprint is much smaller than in person.
Absolutely.
So that's another benefit of, I think, continued virtual business, where if we can cut down on the number of in-person trips, we're all cutting down on our carbon footprint massively.
I am sure. Good one. Absolutely. Great, Veer. Thank you so much once again, and really appreciate your time. So look forward to more conversations.
Likewise, Dhaval, and thank you and have a good evening.
You have a great day ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you.